Hi, this is Ben from the Mississippi Sandhill Crane National Wildlife Refuge, and Ben is going to talk to us this morning. He's kind enough to talk to us about the Sandhill Crane. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, and your name is?
My name is Carlisle.
Carlisle, good morning. I was just explaining the area that the Mississippi Sandhill Crane National Wildlife Refuge is located at. We're in southern Mississippi. We're in Jackson County, and it's a high density populated area. And 50 years ago, these lands were set aside for the sandhill crane because it is an endangered species, and it was identified as that back in '73, and it still remains that today. They're under a lot of pressure with development in the area. They're different from other cranes in the fact that they don't migrate. They don't fly great distances when the weather changes. They stay right here. And
they like it down here in Mississippi.
They do. It's everything. This is the Goldilocks of the sandhill cranes. In other words, this was just right for them.
Oh.
And what happened was...
Excuse me, Ben, could you tell us how big these cranes are? Because we're standing here in your center hoping that they're going to fly by.
Well, hopefully they'll fly by and land for us. Maybe we'll get lucky enough to see them. They're basically, you're going to be about 4 foot tall.
Okay.
They're going to be full grown pretty much around 5 months, 4 to 6 months. So if you saw a young one, even then it would look like one that was 20 years old. They live a long time, but they grow very fast. They're pretty much a ground around here, this Mississippi Sandhill crane, they do a lot of walking. You'll see them walking through the tall grasses, whereas a lot of the other cranes, like we're from Michigan, we're volunteering here, they fly real high in the sky. They walk obviously quite a bit, but these cranes here are not high flyers. Part of that may be because they're not a big migratory type bird. They stay right here. So everything they really need is found right in here in what's called the savanna.
Yes.
And that's a different territory. I don't know if your camera would pick it up, but you can see in this artist rendering here, this is what it looks like. And you can see the picture of the cranes flying through the trees. Well, that's a common sight here, to see them fly through the trees. Now, we would never see that in Michigan. They're always up above thousands of feet in the sky.
Well,
these birds have a tendency not to do that.
Could you explain to us, because when I came in off of I-10. Yeah, I-10, and then came into the refuge, then it becomes it looks like anyhow that the trees aren't as close together, that these, I guess they're pine trees, aren't as close together. So do you manage this refuge and have these savanna-like areas where there's a lot of grass, or is it that way automatically? Well,
because of it has to be managed now, and this is what it would have been like. It would have looked like what you see outside, and the way this rendering here shows it was open. That's the way it would have been in the past. Through natural fire that would have started, there wasn't anybody to put it out, so it burnt itself out. Maybe the native Indians possibly performed some kind of process to stop the fire, but most of it took care of itself. So if the forest would keep itself cleared out. Well, what wound up happening is when it got developed and people came in, and a lot of it was through refrigeration, air conditioning, mobility, highways, economics. People had more money to spend. More and more people came this way to the south, just like they did in Florida and all these coastal areas. And what development did was they started draining these areas, taking down these native species, putting in other species that would grow quicker to market and take the timber out. So they got rid of a lot of the stuff that was already here, and things were not supposed to be that way. And so the woods got extremely thick with brush. These birds cannot live in that type of wood environment. So what we do here is through the use of fire, we use fire. We have a complete fire department here that services the almost 20,000 acres, and they will come through and burn off the invasive species. A lot of these pines here, we've got the longleaf pine, the fire doesn't hurt it like it would some other species. In fact, that actually promotes and helps it. And the burning of the savanna also gets rid of some of the species that we don't want to be here, and it quickly regrows. But it adds a lot of nutrients back into the ground because there isn't a lot of nutrients here. This was never an area that you typically come in and put like a lot of crops in. It's a nutrient poor soil. So not everything grows good here. So that's really what happened. And to make it get back to the way it was before man came in and changed everything, we actually now have to have a fire department that manages it for us. So that's how we keep it like the bird would like it, trying to get these numbers back up. And it's taken from 1975 to today, we're close to 200 birds. It's taken that long to get the numbers back up, because back in 73, the crane was identified as an endangered species. And about in 75, we were down to about 5 breeding pair of birds left in the world. They mate for life, and they choose their one mate. They're long-lived. They'll live 25 years. They don't start breeding until they're 5 years old. So there's a 5-year period that they're not reproducing their own self. And once at 5 years comes, when they do find a mate, they'll typically lay 1 to 2 eggs.
A year,
and that's it. And they are a bird that would have their nest on the ground. So the eggs are on the ground, which makes them a lot more vulnerable than a bird in a tree.
Thank you for bringing that up. So as what would be predators, like I saw some roadkill coming over from New Orleans on my way to Mobile, and the roadkill looked like it was like a bobcat or something.
Oh, that could have been. Here we have, that could very well be here. You know, we would have your coyote.
Yeah, like a coyote.
They can survive in a lot of places. Raccoon. We've got any kind of bird of prey. We've got your hawks, owls. Actually, we have a video of an owl attacking a nest through a cam and a digital cam, and that was pretty interesting to see that happen at night. So there's a lot of things out there that would get them, and we don't allow any hunting here on the refuge. So we also have that issue. Nobody's trapping or doing anything here. So they're kind of the way they would have been long ago. So we don't have any major large predators. We don't have any wild pigs here on this area.
Wild
which is
pigs?
A good thing. Yes, they can do a lot of damage, and they'll eat anything, and they're pretty prolific. They'll have a few litters a year. So there's a lot of things here that can hurt them. But part of it really is that it just, when you see the sandhill crane, sometimes you'll see 2 of the chicks with them when they're young. But a lot of times it's just 1. Now what we do here is we will take one of the eggs from the nest to help to increase the breeding success of the egg fledging. We'll take that egg off site. There's a place in Florida and another one in Louisiana where that egg will be hatched, and then it will be raised without exposure to humans through costumes and props and different things to get that chick acclimated to becoming an adult. And when it becomes about 5 months old, it's relocated back here to the refuge, and it's brought into a penned facility and reacclimated. We check to make sure that it's afraid of predators. We introduce it to a few things that it would normally run into out here on the refuge. And if it shows a response of fear, that's a good thing. And then it's released here on the refuge.
Well,
so we're helping the parents, because it would be just like a parent with 2 or 3 children in a busy department store. They're having to watch everything and shop too. And the crane's doing the same thing. If they're having to watch two, it's easier for them to, I mean, it's wonderful if they can raise two successfully, but the numbers are not great that happens. So we try to assist them by taking that one egg, letting them focus on the other one, and then we reintroduce that.
I can understand that mentality, but what I can't understand is if you have raised the crane in an incubator setting, it's maybe not called an incubator setting, but off-site, let's just say off-site, and then you bring it back and try to acclimate it and make it show fear or anxiety or whatever that word is, that, hey, you've got predators out there, how are you going to protect yourself? Like, how does that happen?
Well, what we do here is when they come in, they're put back into an enclosed pen with a top on it that they can't escape there. There's usually a group of them that were raised the same way off-site. So there's a little bit of camaraderie there. They obviously, that gives them some comfort, but they're also sheltered from any kind of human interaction through costumes and props. We really avoid showing them humans at all. So what they see is a costumed person that looks like a crane, and we have props. I could show you that some different things we have on the wall. So it's like a crane puppet.
I see.
And so when they come back in here, at a certain point, we reintroduce predators to them. Long tethered dogs.
When you say that, are you saying real or puppets?
Well, when they're predators, it would be a dog. So we don't bring a coyote in or anything like that. But what we do is we bring in a dog, which would resemble a coyote.
Okay.
And so we have some volunteers that they would bring their dog in on a long leash. Again, the humans are in a camouflage suit where they're not detectable. And then the dogs are prompted to go towards the pen. And they're not released where they charge it. But just getting them close to the pen, we were able to see the reaction of the birds, that they knew that wasn't something they had ever seen before.
Wow.
And their first instinct was to take flight, which they tried to do, and they weren't able to do because we had the soft canopy on the pen. And it didn't need to do that very long. It was a matter of seconds to realize their instinct was where it should be. That was a fright to flight program.
Awesome.
So that was what we did. Then after that period, you watch them and you see that, they've already been eating. They eat a lot of grasses. They eat a lot of bugs. We do substitute with some corn for viewing purposes and so on, but they don't need us to feed them. There's plenty out here for them to eat. And once we observe all that, then they're released. They have a tendency to hang around that environment for a while. The other cranes do come in. There is a meet and greet. The other cranes do come in. They talk through the fence. They're very vocal. They get to know each other. And again, like I say, they mate for life. So when they pick their mate, they're very social. But then they're also, when they pair off, you'll see them together.
Could they mate with their twin or their other sibling?
I don't believe so.
No.
I doubt if that happens. They're very selective. One of the questions we get asked here quite often is, especially someone maybe from Michigan or Wisconsin, Illinois, they'll say, I see cranes all the time where I'm from. When they come down here, do they mate with these cranes? And they do not. The Mississippi Sandhill crane is its own subspecies of crane. It is a little genetically different. It mates with its own breed, and it doesn't mate with, say, a greater crane, one that might be called a greater crane, which would be a little bit larger. If you saw them out there, you might see just a little bit of a difference. They look exactly the same, but they don't do that. And we have a big enough genetic pool that we don't see any kind of abnormalities or anything of that nature. One thing I'd like to add is the Mississippi Sandhill Crane National Wildlife Refuge was the very first refuge ever set aside for the Endangered Species Act in the entire United States. That developed in 1975 when the crane was identified as an endangered species in 73. The wheels got into motion, things started, and this refuge was the very first one. So all of them that you see that have been based on the Endangered Species Act came after the Mississippi Sandhill Crane Center.
That's awesome. Thank you. Well, Ben, this has been a wonderful, wonderful experience in learning about the Sandhill crane. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge.
You're welcome.